Welcome to the American Business Podcast. I'm Kevin Deveji, your host. I'm welcoming you episode 110. And today's number is 1.31 trillion. That is the size of US venture capital market size in the US, $1.31 trillion in 2025. That's the projected size of the US venture capital market, which is the world's largest venture capital market. Speaking of VC, venture capital, we have a great guest. But before we started, I'd like to invite you to our virtual online business networking event. Every month, the American Business Podcast organizes online business networking event called the Connection America Business Alliance online networking event. This month, we are organizing online business networking event on December 19, and we'll start at 9:30 a.m. We have a limited seating, and if you'd like to join us to introduce your company, promote your products, services, your promotions, and offering, consider joining us. When you scan the QR code on the screen, you can sign up for the online business networking event, and you can join us. What is unique about this online networking event is that it is podcasting plus networking. While you are networking with other business professionals, the conversations, the networking event will be live on the American Business Podcast in front of thousands of American Business Podcast followers and subscribers. I'll have the pleasure of moderating the event, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the networking event for December 19. Please scan the QR code and join us. We have limited seating, and we're almost sold out. So today is a great day to sign up for the online networking event, Connection America, powered by the American Business Podcast. All right, let's invite our guest to our virtual stage, and let's get the conversation started. Hello, Greg. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Kevin. Good to meet you, and thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's very nice meeting you. I hope you are fine. How is your week going so far?
It's going great. It's going great. Still early in the week, but very, very busy trying to get a bunch of things done for to complete the old year and get ready for 2026.
Yes, that's great. Well, normally we stream from New York City. That's our home. But today we are streaming from Houston, Texas, which is the energy capital of the nation. Where are you connecting from?
From the Bay Area. I'm just north of San Francisco.
Okay, great. Well, so I'm covering the south. You are covering the west. I think we can get the conversation started.
I'm sure we have some friends in New York we could bring to the call. We cover the whole country that way.
Yes, we are almost there. That is true. We should do it next time. Sounds good. So let's get started. As a start, would you please introduce yourself and your organization to our listeners and to our viewers?
Sure. So my name is Greg Brager. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at a new company called Collective Liquidity. We focus on providing shareholders, principally employees of venture-backed companies that are still private, with liquidity and a variety of financial products that allow them to create better financial outcomes using their pre-IPO equity.
How did you get started? Can you tell us about your career journey, how your career journey has unfolded over the years?
Yeah, and in a sense, the issues around venture capital, liquidity, and secondary market is ones I've been unknowingly working on from the beginning of my career. So, for example, I began out of grad school as a lawyer in Silicon Valley at a firm called Wilson Sonsini, which those of your listeners that are active in the venture world will no doubt have heard of. Very much part of the original course ecosystem in Sand Hill Road and Palo Alto for the venture capital community. I didn't really like being a lawyer much, so I crossed over to the business side relatively early in my career. I had the good fortune to connect with a co-founder, and he and I started a couple of companies that had kind of small to mid-sized public exits. But really, the most relevant thing or background for what we're now doing at Collective is that I founded a platform called SharesPost in 2009. And SharesPost was the first online marketplace connecting buyers and sellers of pre-IPO company shares. And we're fortunate to kind of be on the right side of the growth of that market of private companies, venture-backed companies staying private much longer. So originally there was just Facebook and LinkedIn and a handful of others. And now, as you point out, there's over $1 trillion worth of these companies, and there's somewhere between 1,300 to 1,500 of them that are worth over $1 billion or more each. And so that's kind of where I've spent the bulk of my career. And I could talk about that more if you like, about the things we did at SharesPost and what we're doing at Collective. But just where would you like to focus?
Absolutely. I mean, what you do is actually very important for organizations, especially offering the shares through your portal is an important service. Is it common in VC industry? You will say this type of service?
Yeah, no, and that's sort of the journey we've been on, because when we started, say, SharesPost in 2009, it was very uncommon, and frankly, there was a fair amount of resistance to the idea of an employee being able to get liquidity for their shares before the IPO. And I think part of the traditional thinking was amongst venture capitalists, no one should get liquidity, no one should get to sell their shares before we do, and we don't want to disincentivize employees by having them sell their equity. We want them to be very aligned and incentivized to do everything they can to make the company succeed. And that was a very successful strategy for growing these companies over many years. But part of the reason and the primary reason I started SharesPost was there was a shift in the capital markets, right? And so in and around 2008, 2009, companies went from, like Google and Facebook, went from wanting to be public companies to not wanting to be public companies. They wanted to delay their IPO. They wanted to stay private much longer. And what that meant to the employee shareholders was that, they're not like the Harvard endowment or an institutional investor that could have a very long investment horizon, right? They needed to pay bills, buy houses, put their kids through school in much shorter time frames than the 10, 11, or 12 years that private companies were starting to stay private and longer. So that strategy that I mentioned before started to break down, because if a big part of your compensation are shares that you receive from the company, but you can't sell them for 10 or 12 years, that doesn't really work for most individuals. So that's why that was the observation that made me think that employees were going to need a marketplace that they could go to find buyers and get liquidity before the company went public.
What type of companies are ideal to utilize your portal?
Yeah. So at Collective, we focus on really late stage venture backed companies. And so what we operate is something called an exchange fund, which is a very, time or a financial product proven over time in public markets, but has not previously been offered in private markets. And it allows employees of companies, say Apple or Google or other kind of public companies, to exchange shares for an interest in a diversified pool for basically a share in a venture fund. And the great advantage of that is that exchange does not trigger capital gains taxes. And so we could talk about, why that is a better solution for many employees than just selling their shares. But given that that's our focus, one of the things that's super important to all of our customers is that they believe and know that the other companies in the portfolio are as good as theirs. As the other shares in the fund are as good as the shares they're contributing. And so to address that, we have an investment committee that pre-approves companies for eligibility for exchange into the fund. And that's a very high bar. So we approve roughly 1 in 10 venture-backed companies. that meet all of our other criteria, so $1 billion or more in market cap, for inclusion in the fund.
How do you see the state of the VC industry nowadays? What are the challenges and opportunities based on your professional
Yeah.
observation and insights?
Well, yeah. I think VC is amongst the most dynamic of all industries, just because of the nature of the technologies and the innovation that they're backing. And innovation, by its nature, is destabilizing. So it's constantly in flux, just as to the companies that they support. And there's no novel insight in saying that AI is roiling or destabilizing everything that essentially it touches at this point, because old business models, old financial strategies, just are being turned on their head. And what startups can do, and what the ability to leverage the technology for different purposes, is not like anything I've seen before. And so that creates enormous opportunity for new investments and new companies. At the same time, I think just from a capital market point of view, like how much capital is available to venture-backed companies, it's always been true that the best companies or the strongest companies can always get financing no matter what the market. But that said, I think just coming out of a research let me step back. So in 2019, 20, and 21, there was this enormous run up in the value of venture-backed companies. So multiples being paid by venture capitalists and other investors, increased to unsupportable, unsustainable points. And as you would expect, when that happens, what follows is a rapid, devaluation of those companies. So a lot of the companies that we focus on lost 40 or 50% of their value in 2022. And there was a real reduction in the amount of market activity, the amount of capital being invested in these companies for 22, 23, 24. And it's really, I think, only in 2025 that we're starting to see kind of a return to what I would consider a normal market. So it's just this sort of pendulum swinging from, increasing valuations in 2020, 21. The market gets too ahead of itself in its valuations. The pendulum swings back the other way. And now I think in 2025 and 2026, we're sort of somewhere in the middle again, in more, call it, normal market conditions. So I guess that's what I'd say. But we're in normal market conditions from a capital raising point of view, but we're in a period of great technology change, given what AI is doing to many, or most, if not all, business models that venture capitalists back.
Well, you just talk about AI, and that was actually my next question. So my question is actually twofold. One is that how do you see the impact of AI in business in general? Also, how do you see the AI in VC industry? Because there are many companies coming in with the AI technology doing different things. And is there a bubble?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I wouldn't position myself as qualified to talk about whether there's a bubble in AI, because that's so dependent on what companies and what sector of the market you're talking about and what the valuations are. And it's something like that, similar to everyone else in my industry, we're exposed to and having to deal with. But I don't claim to have any particular expertise in the area. But just from a high level, I see what everyone else sees, right? Just the enormous cost efficiencies, and we've seen that. We're a small company, but just just on the technology side, what we're able to do now with a relatively small number of developers is what it would have taken large teams to have done just 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so the cost efficiency of the business and the impact that has on margins, I think, is still rippling its way through the economy. But we're not unique. So if we're seeing 30, 40, 50% cost reductions from the staff that we don't need to hire because of what AI can do for our engineers, just to focus on the engineering side of things, then that has really dramatic and I think positive consequences for profitability, margins, productivity across many, many industries. If we talk about just the impact of AI on Collective's product, right? So we are essentially a liquidity provider. We are we sell our product by making clear to an employee that holds these shares, looking at the different options they have for where they can get liquidity for their shares, how they can turn it into a financial plan. And so what we're most focused on is using AI to very scalably go out and engage the employees of the companies that we are eligible for exchange into our fund, and find ways for them to have a conversation with us through an AI agent of ours that gives them the answers. Why is it better? Well, I could sell my shares and then buy diversifying assets, or I could exchange into your fund and then get a loan. All the different permutations. There's never been until now tools other than a live human being that could have those conversations. And live human beings are obviously expensive. They take breaks, they go on vacations, and AI is always there. So, it's not something that we are, imminently launching, but it is like all financial advice, wealth management platforms, even at the largest banks, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, everybody, I think, knows that there's a sea change happening, and people are racing to be the first to figure out what it looks like and to implement it. And so that's what we're looking at on that side. And then just the last thing I'll talk about in terms of the impact of AI in our business, we focus on venture-backed companies and having a high-performing portfolio of the best companies across a section of venture capital firms. And so obviously that includes AI, and it's a very difficult investment environment because so much capital is being put to work at such high valuation, such a multiple on what is actual revenue today. It is, our thought is you really need to be an expert to invest in that, and we don't position ourselves as at the forefront of that. So our much more conservative strategy than trying to pick, which model is going to win out over time. Very, very difficult to do. We focus on investment in the infrastructure providers, so the data centers, the chip manufacturers, sort of the businesses that are providing, call it, to use a cliche, the picks and shovels to the gold rush that is happening, because those are much more predictable businesses and they're generating real revenue today.
Yes, my background is also enterprise business software. So we work with AI all the time, especially to your point, using AI agents in some functionalities is very advantageous for companies. And using AI agents nowadays, it's affordable, accessible. You can be a small company, a mid-sized company, an enterprise company. There is something for everyone based on their requirements. So it is more practical than before.
Yeah,
that's a reality.
Well, and it's interesting you're talking about sort of the small company versus big company. I think big companies have always been able, given they have the capital to do it, to hire large teams of people and they can manage it. But and AI will make them much more efficient. But I think the impact on more of the startup or early stage venture capital backed companies is significantly more dramatic, because you can do things with much smaller amounts of capital because you don't need to hire the same amount of staff, and startups are always capital constrained, or almost always capital constrained. And so you'll see businesses that survive and thrive that otherwise just weren't possible. It reminds me, you go back many years, just of the sort of development of some of the early .com companies. And I remember some of the companies I mentioned that I started early on were, one was called Cars Direct, was in the auto space. And I think we ended up spending something like $20 million to build data centers and hosting services because we had to have all of our own servers. Now, fast forward 20 years or so, with a credit card, and for $15 a month, I can go to Amazon Web Services and get everything that it would have cost $20 million to build all those years ago. I think the same thing is going to happen in AI, where the things that you would have had to pay, you would have to get to your Series B or Series C financing to afford in terms of headcount and staff to perform certain business functions. Now I can get for a credit card and $25 a month from one of these AI agents. I can train it on my business and my product, and I can be in business with a much smaller amount of capital, and that really changes the dynamics. And I think is something that's going to be felt in the venture capital world for a long time.
Let's take a quick commercial break.
Sure.
And right after that, if that's okay, I love to learn about, especially we have a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and they like to start businesses and they like to engage with VCs. Maybe you can share some of your insights as to what is the best way to approach a VC and how to get funded if there is a business idea, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yes, let's have this conversation. Let's have a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and continue
Sounds good,
this
Kevin.
insightful conversation. Thank you, Greg.
Looking forward to it. Cheers.
Support for the American Business Podcast comes from Anywhere Apps by Kirk Consulting, now Cherry Baker. It is time to digitize and automate your business processes. Anywhere Apps designed for small and mid-sized companies as well as enterprise-level companies to help you digitize and automate your business processes. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the Anywhere apps that's very popular in the US. It is called Nonprofit Management Anywhere. If you are a nonprofit and you like to manage your donations, volunteers, fundraising events, your grants, and other documents for compliance and operational purposes, consider Nonprofit Management Anywhere. It is a completely cloud service. You can start using it today with no need for local installation on your server or on your local laptop and computers. It is user-friendly and it's easy to deploy, and you can start using it today. I have the QR code on the screen. You can scan the QR code and you can learn more about Anywhere apps, including Nonprofit Management Anywhere. Well, there is more. If you'd like to talk to me directly about Anywhere apps, you can just send me an email directly, kevin@kirkconsulting.com. Anywhere apps are modern, they are easy to use, they are affordable, practical, and more importantly, that's designed for you to help you digitize and automate your business processes. Scan the QR code or just send me a direct email, kevin@kirkconsulting.com. Thank you for your support. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from iStack. iStack is offering you the latest visuals for your marketing projects, advertising projects, and other projects that need communicative latest visuals. Right now, iStack is offering you 20% discount if you start shopping today. I have the QR code on the screen. When you scan the QR code, you can start your shopping experience with iStack immediately. Whether you are looking for visuals designed by professionals or you are looking for visuals designed by AI, iStack is offering you all these options starting today. Please scan the QR code and start shopping visuals on iStack website. Remember, there is 20% discount when you start shopping today. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for your support. All right, we are back in the American Business Podcast. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about the VC. We talk about the VC industry in general.
Sure.
Let's talk about if an organization, a startup,
Mhm.
or a company that needs actually funding to grow and expand. What is the best way to approach a VC or VC industry in general?
Well, it's challenging because it is, first of all, we talk about the VC industry generally. It used to be very concentrated in one place, at least I'll just speak to the US, where 90% of venture capital, this is 20 years ago, was all located in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, sort of Bay Area sorts of investors. And as the industry has grown at such a tremendous rate over the last, as I said, 20 years, it is now spread to in large amounts of venture capital sit in New York and in Boston, lesser amounts of capital in Austin, Texas, or in the Research Triangle and Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill and other places like that. So, it is spread, but I guess it is still a fairly personal industry investment, and that's what sort of makes it unique, certainly compared to public markets or investing in stocks and bonds, because unlike other investments where the investor can take a look at financial metrics and see the website, the business online, and research it in kind of traditional ways, a venture capitalist is looking at a startup. There is no company to invest in, and the primary thing that they're considering is a very early stage idea, but most importantly, the founder, him or herself. And that's really what the most successful venture capitalists that I've talked to, that's what they focus on. They'll listen to the business idea, but the bet is on the founder. So if they believe that you're someone who's demonstrated success in the past, obviously it's best if that success is in other startups. That makes it really easy. But even in cases where that's not in a person's resume, there are other kinds of success that you can point to. But the challenging part is these, typically the venture capital, as I said, is a personal industry. So getting an introduction, a personal introduction, is by far the best way to connect with a venture capitalist. And it can be very challenging. But you can imagine from the venture capitalist point of view, there are many, many more businesses requesting funding than deserve funding, or certainly deserve their capital, if you think of it from their perspective. And so if they engage with everybody who sends them an email saying, take a look at my company, there's just, there's no filter. So in order to be able to pay attention to the businesses that are most likely to be of interest to them, they look for people to vouch for someone before they spend time. And so a personal connection is the natural way. If I know you, Kevin, and you know me, and I say to you, I've got somebody I think has got a good business, and you're like, well, Greg knows, he's has some experience in recognizing what's a good business and what's not. If he says it's good, I'll spend a little time with him. But if it's just someone who emails you saying I've got a good business, you probably don't have enough time in the day to look at every one of those emails. So personal connections. And so that the way to leverage that is to build your network. It doesn't mean that you need to have your childhood best friend be the one to introduce you to a VC. It can be someone you meet on LinkedIn and engage in a conversation, or engage, through, a podcast, or however you start a dialogue with them. But if they're going to vouch for you, you need to have some kind of track record with them, even if it's only an online conversation about ideas. Maybe you share a view, or you provided a suggestion that they found helpful for their business. So, that there's ways to build a network without being physically in the same place, although that helps. Then there are events that people go to, and pitches. Those are those would be, of the three. Personal introduction would be by far the most successful way of getting in front of a venture capital.
Absolutely.
But conferences, online connections, these can work as well.
Well, actually, I'm quite a networker. I network a lot, so I believe in networking. So to your point, absolutely. So it's not what you know, who you know, right? So in that sense, that's why actually we organized the online networking event called Connection America Business Alliance. So our goal is to invite business professionals and have the discussions and connections that's coming from the American Business Podcast. So this is an example.
Yeah, no, it's a great example. It's a very efficient way probably to meet a lot of venture capitalists. And look, the other thing is, I think anytime you can have a conversation with an investor, or almost any time, it's always worth having, even though a very small amount of time does it actually result in investment, because you're talking frequently, or most of the time, to someone who's smart and in the business of understanding business. And so if they will almost, if they're taking the time to listen to your pitch, they'll probably take the time to tell you what they like and don't like about it. And that feedback is very valuable, because then you learn from what they said. So this person I talked to doesn't want to invest because whatever it might be, that the business model, the margins, the unit economics, whatever it is. And you take those lessons and you say, for example, if the unit economics are not attractive to a particular investor, then you learn everything there is to know about unit economics, figure out how to modify it in your business model so that it meets that objection. And then the next call that you have, that's not a sticking point, and it's probably something else that maybe is a weakness in your business plan, but then you address that, and eventually the business plan and the pitch gets stronger and stronger each time you give a presentation and get feedback from a smart investor.
Yes, it's a great learning experience.
Yes.
I've been to many pitching events, especially in the past. And to your point, yes. So some of them, the business owners or startups, they came to stage. That was quite an event actually that I've been to. So one of them, So there were like 3 to 5 companies. They came. That was like a
Mhm.
stage, right? So they can
Mhm.
make the
Sure.
presentation demonstrations, and also investors came in. So they were
Mhm.
also sitting on the side, and they all
Mhm.
introduced themselves. They came from venture capitalist organizations or banks or other private investors. It was a mix actually.
Mhm.
And then they all said, "Hey, today I'm here to listen and learn these businesses, and I'm allowed to or authorized to write, let's say, $200,000 of check
Yeah.
for the investment and things like that." That was
Mhm.
pretty realistic,
Yeah.
real. And all these businesses came one by one. They were on the stage. They made their pitch. They introduced their products, benefits, and features, and then they got the feedback right there. To your point,
Mhm.
hey, I like this because of such and such. I don't like this because I find this to be a challenge. You are first, or there are
Mhm.
many others, or what
Yeah.
is your how do you differentiate yourself? For example,
Yeah.
they were good questions or those good feedback in
Yes.
terms of learning. Was also pretty exciting too to watch right there
Yeah.
on the
Yeah. No,
stage.
it sounds like a version. I'm sure you know the show Shark Tank, right? Where they're,
Yes, yes,
yeah. But it's a good format. One, it's
yes.
entertaining for the audience, which is that's useful to bring together that community. So making it interesting is important, or people don't come.
Mhm,
But it's also, as you said, it's a way for everybody in the audience, not just the people on the stage, to kind of learn how venture capitalists think and evaluate businesses, so that they can then take those lessons back to their own business and make them better.
mhm. So in those events, my observation was it was a mix. So some like a certain idea, some just like the actual Shark Tank. Actually, it was it's
Mhm.
a good example. Some find it to be so. There is a challenge, right? So you can be first. You have an
Mhm.
idea. You develop something first time.
Mhm.
So it is great to be first. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's not great to be first because you are first. So no one knows anything about it, even in the category. So it's advantage and challenge at the same time.
Yeah.
For example, that's what I noticed one of the
Yes.
conversations we had.
No, I think many successful venture capitalists will say that timing is by far the most important, or maybe not by far, it is among the most important qualities in whether a company succeeds or not. I mean, there are many companies before Uber was started that had ideas similar to Uber, but the technology wasn't right, the market wasn't right, the investors weren't right, et cetera. And then it's sort of in the right time at the right place, and things grow very quickly, and can be very successful. But yeah, it's true. And so at Collective Liquidity, which is the company I'm at now, we are the first of our kind in the private market. And so we have a lot of to be first means you have a lot of education to do. It's one easy thing. If your product has been in the market for a long time, everybody understands it. They know how to use it. They know when to buy it, and they know who they want to buy it from. But if you're explaining to them why they need it or what the advantages are because they've never heard of it before, that's a challenge you've got to overcome. And it is the advantage, of course, of being first is we don't have any competition for what we do. And we think that we have a really better solution than is currently available in the market. So I think that's why we've been able to grow as much as we have.
You've been in business for a long time. You have years of experience
Mhm.
professionally. How
Mhm.
would you define leadership, and what are the great leadership qualities?
Mhm. Well, there's all different kinds of leadership in different industries and in different parts of society. I guess would be the way to put it. But I think leadership in business is focused really around two things. One, sort of the vision that you see, right? And so um, if you're going to really lead in business, or certainly in kind of startups or innovation or the venture economy, I think you need to have an idea that maybe isn't something you can realize today, even as you launch your initial product, but sort of where you see your product going and how it's going to affect the industry that you're in, and ultimately people's lives. How are you going to make better outcomes for your customers that are better by enough of an increment to really matter to people? So it's a vision, I guess, and to see it clearly enough that you can explain it to other people, get them excited about it. Because the hardest thing with a startup is you're everything that you're talking about is just initially is just on a PowerPoint. It's a presentation. It's not a reality.
Idea.
Yes, exactly. So the more um, detail that you can provide, the more excitement that you can bring to why you're going to make this amazing thing happen, even though might take you 5 years to get there. I think that is enormously important. And then the second thing, and then I'll just say, for me, that was the easier part, all right, for founding a successful business. I mentioned this sort of shift in the capital markets that I saw in 2009, and so the idea and being able to argue for it was or describe it came somewhat easily. What was harder, and is sort of the complete sort of polar opposite of the kind of grand vision that is very intellectual, is something you have in your head, is managing people. And the relatively few people do both really well. And so managing people, aligning them so that they work together as a team, so they have confidence in you and in the organization, that they feel well treated, and therefore give their best back to the organization, was much more of a challenge for me. I thought all I would need to do is have a vision and an idea, and everything else would just come together. And then you get into the business of actually executing on an idea and making it real. Turns out you can't do everything on your own. You need really talented, smart, motivated people. So to recruit them, retain them, motivate them, coordinate them, that's what you spend 98% of your day doing as a CEO, particularly of a growing organization. Because once you've had the idea, you need other people to make it real for you or with you.
What is one key career lesson that you learned the hard way?
Well, yeah, maybe, and this kind of fits with what we're doing at Collective. So, I've been fortunate to be in a number of organizations or companies or startups that reach some level of success, right? So maybe not billion-dollar market cap status, but in the hundreds of millions, the enterprise, not my share of the company, but the companies themselves. And I guess, actually here's a stat for you that I think was interesting. We did this sort of research. So at Collective, we looked at every company that has done or did a Series C financing between 2010 and 2015. And as you know, Kevin, probably, a Series C company, these are typically $50 and $100 million raises. These are companies that are really no longer startups. They're proven. They've got a product. They've got customers. Typically they'll have over $100 million in revenue. So very frequently these companies, people think this company is going to the moon. This company can't fail. Everything's going to go really well. And so I'm going to hold on to my shares, and that's going to be, I'll leave all of my net worth tied up in this one company because it's doing so well. But we then looked at, in 2025, how many of those companies had actually achieved an exit for their employees a decade later, and it was only 38%. And so if you think about it, no matter, on your most optimistic day, when you've closed your Series C financing and your company now has tens of millions of dollars to grow the product, things are going really well, it still is less likely, more likely than not, that those shares won't actually reach an exit. And so, I've seen that anecdotally in my life, where I've had companies that at different points had an enormous amounts of momentum, but then they hit a stumbling block. Either there was a disruptive technology that we didn't expect. So AI is that in this market in a big way. Or we thought our company was going to go public in a certain time frame, but then the capital markets crashed and the IPO window closed, and so there was no exit. Or a new competitor was formed because a big player entered the market that nobody expected to compete with us. And so I guess one of the most important pieces of advice that I'd give to people in the venture industry is to find ways to diversify your interest in your company, so you're not betting all on just a single company's outcome. That's very binary, right? So if you can find liquidity either by selling shares or coming to us at Collective Liquidity and exchanging your shares for a diversified interest, I think that's always a good idea. I think you sleep easier at night if there's, call it, a sort of a floor under your net worth. So that even if your company is one of the ones that doesn't achieve an exit, you can still, buy a house, put your kids through school, and you're not, so riding the roller coaster up and down of a single company. It helps you sleep at night, I guess.
When we think about startups, business in general, but startups also, it is hard. It's out of hard work, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes things don't go the way that we like it to be. We need
Mhm.
to focus on address certain
Mhm.
issues,
Mhm.
and there
Pivot.
is hardship
Yeah.
and there is pivoting needing. So, how to stay motivated and inspired in times of hardship and challenges?
Yeah. Well, I think certainly, I agree, as you said, sort of in a startup, almost nothing goes the way that you expect it will. And that, again, that goes back to why, a venture capitalist is investing not so much in the idea, but in the person, because the idea is going to change no matter what you thought the good idea was. Once you actually try to make it real and see what customers respond to it and how the market reacts to it, you need to modify it. And so that's what a venture capitalist investing in. It's someone who can pivot the business, adapt to the market as it develops, learn from their mistakes, and make something out of it at the end of the day. And in terms of, how have I found ways to stay motivated? I think it goes back to the idea, the vision that you start with, right? So if you believe that what you're trying to build, the product you're trying to bring to market, is actually useful, that people will use it, that it will make their lives better. Um, Not only does it give you sort of a rational, commercial, self-interested reason to do it, because you're going to build a valuable company and you're going to own part of it, and obviously good things financially come out of that. But it also, there's a pride and an excitement about creating something new that you saw first, and that's something that you made happen and had a positive impact. And so, now, if that is your 5-year goal, that your vision is what the innovation you're going to create in the market, how you get there in months 3, 4, 5, 6, year 1, year 2, year 3 is less important, right? And you can't predict that. You have to be very opportunistic and nimble and take advantage of the opportunities when they come, the partnerships or the technology innovation that you couldn't have predicted at the start of the business. But if you started something with a vision that you care about, it's much easier to stay with it. If you just start, and let's just take the opposite example. If you just start a business because you had an idea, you thought it would make a little bit of money or maybe a lot of money, maybe it isn't really that useful a product, but there you see like an opportunity. And then you start that business and you find out it's not as easy as you thought, because it never is. That's something you're much more likely to abandon, because it's not, the opportunity you saw was very limited in its nature. And if the change that you discovered undermines that opportunity, then you'll just probably think of another opportunity to do the same thing again. But if you thought of something you thought was really important to get done, you'll just change your business model and do something, get there through a different path than you had initially anticipated.
Is there a book, a movie, a show that you recommend for startup
Yeah.
owners, business owners?
Well, look, I don't have anything particularly unique. There are all kinds of. I mean, I don't know if there's a million, but I'm sure tens of thousands of books about different business. And there's authors like Malcolm Gladwell and others that have really interesting observations. And I would say actually some of them, are not new books, but books that have been around for a long time. Like Peter Drucker and his insights into business are really interesting. But there's a show that came out that I thought was really interesting, not because it looks anything like venture capital, but it really talks to me about the startup experience. And so the show is called The Bear. And it's a show about a restaurant, essentially, about a chef that inherits his family business, which is just a sandwich shop in Chicago. And he comes from the finest restaurants and training in the French Laundry out here in California, and the 4-star or 3-star Michelin rated restaurants and such. And it's about his struggle with the employees there to turn what is a sandwich shop into a Michelin star rated restaurant. And it's about the stress and the intensity that comes with it, and the joys and rewards when it works, and the challenges when it doesn't. And it is very much also about the people that I was talking about, and how he tries, succeeds sometimes, fails a lot of the time, to bring everybody together around this idea, despite the cost and the stress it causes the rest of the team to try and make this magical thing happen. So it's an entertaining show. It's not Malcolm Gladwell for sure. It's not about crossing the chasm or unit economics or profit margins, but it's about what it means to struggle in business with the idea of something that you have a passion for, what it costs you, and what it brings you when it succeeds.
Yes, when it comes to startups, especially,
Yeah.
everything starts with an idea, but
Hmm.
that also has to be an execution.
Yes.
So these they have to come together, which are actually they are working together, but fundamental two different things. One is an idea,
Yeah.
other one is the execution of the idea.
Yeah.
And I had a guest actually last week.
Hmm.
Greg Cobb came from actually Archer by Cherry Beckert
Hmm.
organization. So he's been in ERP software industry for decades. They're experts
Hmm.
in it. And we had a conversation about this. And he said one thing that I remember. He said, um, the idea without execution is hallucination. So
Yeah.
it has to be. We have to put it to work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just stays there, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, and I would say that it's far easier to have an idea. Like we can all sit around and kind of daydream what are, there's an app for that. And you could think, yes, but making it real is much more difficult. And it's, as I said at the beginning, it'd be interesting to hear your sort of observation. I think it's rare that someone is really good at both of those things, because you're either, a person that tends to have call it a life of the mind and like ideas and play with ideas, or you're an operator and you're somebody that, wants to, work with people and get their hands dirty and in the trenches. And but if you can do both, or if you're really naturally good at one and you learn to do the other through discipline and hard work and practice and repetition, and education, that's where you need to be a successful startup founder, I think.
in your professional journey, what is the best and worst advice that you ever received?
Yeah. So I can't think necessarily of best advice, worst advice. I guess if I had to say sort of best advice I'd ever received, and it's I don't know if this is the kind of thing that you're looking for, but what I found over years is where I've been successful. I've played on my strengths, and I've known where my weaknesses are, um, and worked on them to develop strategies to address them so that they didn't bring down this, the whatever it is that I was trying to achieve. So if I was looking for the best advice, I think it's, know thyself, right? Which is, kind of literally ancient advice. I think I want to say it's Aristotle, but I'll probably get that wrong. But it's true, right? So if you know, and we were just talking for a second ago, and seemingly unrelated, but I think maybe there's a connection. Are you someone whose strengths lie in the idea part of it, maybe, and you're terrible at operations? If you know yourself and can admit that to yourself, and you're honest about that, and you don't think that you can do everything, maybe that's a reason to go find a co-founder that does the part of the business that you can't. Or if you know yourself and you know that you can do both, then even though there's somebody who wants to be your co-founder, you have the conviction to say, no, I'm going to run this thing myself. I'm going to start it on my own. So, it's the most generic advice, but I think it is, it applies to really all things, all areas of your life, but certainly it applies to business. Knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not, and working on those things that you're not good at, or addressing them, or finding other ways to compensate for them. And it's the people that aren't in touch with their strengths and weaknesses, or their passions, or what they care about, that are just will constantly find challenges and impediments to their business, and have a hard time succeeding.
In this podcast episode, in the
Mhm.
American Business Podcast, any question that you expected me to ask you, but I didn't ask you?
Not that I can think about. Yeah, I guess if there's something that is unique to what we're doing now at Collective, my current company, it's about providing liquidity and diversification for employees of pre-IPO companies so that they can build a real sound financial plan. So, to the extent you, after the podcast, or any of your listeners want to kind of reach out, I'm just Greg at collectiveliquidity.com. Happy to explain how we do it. We're really proud of the platform that we built and the solution that we bring, because we think we really have found a way to create sort of a safer, smarter financial future for the people that we work with.
Do you have any career advice for the next generation?
Well, so I think it's hard to avoid talking about AI. So I have two children, right? One is 22, one's 18. So they're right at the beginning of their career, and they're thinking about whether college makes sense or doesn't make sense, or whether grad school does, or whether they want to be consultants or investment bankers, or they want to be entrepreneurs. And so my children are taking different choices. But I think thinking through how AI will change different industries and professions is important. I've never seen as unpredictable a future as we have now. I realize it was probably foolish 10 years ago to think that the world would continue to be as it had been, and that there would just be gradual incremental improvements of change in the kind of pace that we've been on. But I think what we're seeing is a radical shift, and I don't think anyone has really seen, in business or in politics or in any field, the ramifications or where things are 10 years. So I think it's prepare for an unstable future. I think the people that will succeed are ones that have their own vision and are looking for their own path, because so much will be enabled for them. As I was talking about before, it's so much easier to pursue your own business or launch your own business with the advantage of the technology, particularly AI, that are becoming available. And so as opposed to those that just want to join large organizations and kind of work their way up the ladder. I think that's going to be a difficult, or certainly more difficult than it's been. It was always difficult. But working for law firms or consulting firms or for investment banks, I think if you're just trying to get on a proven career track, most of those are going to be very different years from today than they are now. But I think if you have an idea and a passion and a vision, and you just pursue that almost for its own sake, it will only be easier to turn that into something valuable, not just financially, but something valuable that you find satisfaction in doing.
Do you have any question that you'd like to ask me before we end our episode?
Well, I guess I would turn the question back to you. So you talk to many different kinds of business leaders and people in different professions. What do you think I should tell my 18-year-old and my 22-year-old in terms of what businesses, what they should think about for their careers?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So, well, you're right. So this is our 110th episode in the American Business Podcast, and I've had the pleasure of meeting with many different business professionals and leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So based on what I've been learning, and based on my professional experience,
Mm-hmm.
I see the way out for the next generation, especially new graduates or just coming into the job market, is internships.
Mm-hmm.
Going. So these internships can start during the school, during college,
Mm-hmm.
during university time, or right after graduation.
Mm-hmm.
These basically gives them the opportunity to be exposed to the market. So to your point, so they can start meeting with
Learn,
senior
network.
professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, networking. Absolutely. Also, they can see whether they like that position, the
Mm-hmm.
industry. Perhaps they may not. So that's also a good opportunity for them to
Mm-hmm.
experience it firsthand. And then if everything goes well, there is always a possibility for hire. So
Yeah.
internship is the way to go. That's what I've been seeing. And it is hard. I mean, it's not for everybody. It's because in our company, we do have internships, for example, education internships.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy for a new graduate or a college student to get into the work
Yeah.
environment and try to operate, learn at the same time. So, but they have to do it. That's the only way. So those who can really break that barrier can
Mm-hmm.
make the difference. Because what I see, I've been interviewing a lot of graduates, a lot of students. Not everyone can do it
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Yeah.
So they need to just jump into it. If you ask
Find
me.
a way.
Internship, yes,
Yeah.
that's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
no, it's and there's far more students that want internships than there are internships. I think that's right. But yeah, there's no better way for a student to just learn or get exposed to business, right? So that meant this. It's like I think where you and you are and I am. We take so much for granted about exposure to business, knowing the things that we like and the industries that we like and don't. But if you've never been in business and all you've done is school, then you have no idea whether what you like or don't like, or where your skills are, or where your passion is.
Mhm.
And so getting started anywhere makes sense. Even if you find you don't like it, that's a valuable lesson. Then you go to a different direction and you go to a different industry and see if you try that. But yeah, I think internships are a great place to start. I'll pass that on to my kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they can always reach out to me. We can always have conversation anytime. I welcome it. And everything is an opportunity for experience. That's also what I learned too in the podcast when I've been talking to different professionals. Even just to your point, let's say an internship program. I
Mhm.
go in. I don't like it for some reason. I may not like the company or maybe just not the industry completely. But I learn. That's a
Yeah,
learning experience in
yeah,
real life. It's not a hypothetical. It's in
yeah,
reality that
yeah.
you
It's
really
not.
experience it.
I agree, and the more real experience you can have, the smarter you get, the faster, and then you start to hone in on what you do like, and then you can develop that much sooner than if you never get started.
Before we end our episode, would you like to share one more time your contact information for our audience and
Yeah.
listeners?
So the company is Collective Liquidity, collectiveliquidity.com. And then anybody who has a question for me, feel free to email me at just Greg, at collectiveliquidity.com.
Greg, thank you so much for being with us in your busy schedule. That has been a great conversation. I'm really happy that we met,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can stay in touch.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing your professional insights and wisdom with us.
I enjoyed it, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I wish you a great week. Thank you. To our audience and to our listeners, we'll be right back after the commercial break. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from DocuSign. DocuSign is the latest cloud-based digital and electronic signature management software system. You can manage your vendor contracts, supplier contracts, customer contracts, NDAs, and any type of legal and commercial documents and signatures digitally on DocuSign. DocuSign is cloud-based. It means you don't have to install any of your documents, keep any of your documents on your laptop or on your mobile device. Furthermore, DocuSign is equipped with intelligent agreement management capabilities, and it helps you automate and digitize your contracts, vendor contracts, and customer contracts quickly. It is modern, it is secure, and there are more than 1 billion users using DocuSign. True story. I use DocuSign regularly for vendor and customer contracts, and it works very smooth. Highly recommended. You see the QR code on the screen, scan the QR code, it'll take you to the sign up page, fill up the form, join the DocuSign community, and digitize and automate your contracts and documents right now, just like I do on daily basis. QR code on the screen, scan it, and enjoy the benefits of DocuSign starting today. Thank you very much. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from YZ. At the American Business Podcast, we always talk about continuous improvement and professional development. That is why we partner with YZ, trust the nation's largest network for tutoring. YZ helps you find the tutor that you need in many different subjects: chemistry, computer, foreign languages, geometry, English, music, physics, reading, SAT, science, and many more. I have the QR code on the screen that you can sign up and start searching for tutors and enjoy the learning experience and continuous improvement as we always talk about in the American Business Podcast. Scan the QR code and sign up for Wizen today. Thank you very much. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone is bringing you foreign languages. Learn from the experts, choose your plan to get started, sign up today. New Year is coming, and if your New Year resolution is learning a foreign language, Rosetta Stone is the choice for you. Rosetta Stone is offering you a long list of foreign languages: French, Italian, German, Chinese, Greek, Turkish, Polish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, and many more languages are available for you to get started today. Scan the QR code on the screen and sign up for Rosetta Stone and enjoy the learning experience of foreign language. Thank you very much. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from Opus Virtual Offices. Opus is offering you more than 600 different locations in the US. It is $99 a month. This includes prestigious business address, professional live call answering, personalized call transferring, business phone number, local phone number, professional mail services, voicemail converted to email. I have the QR code on the screen. You can sign up for Opus today. Opus is offering you hundreds of locations in the US that you can pick, any of them that you like, and you can start having your virtual office today. Please scan the QR code and start using Opus Virtual Offices today. Thank you for your support. Support for the American Business Podcast comes from Just Answer. Real help from real experts 24/7. Experts such as lawyers, doctors, veterinarians, computer technicians, home improvement experts, mechanics, personal tax experts, computer technicians, and many other experts are available for you 24/7 on Just Answer. You'll get your answers anytime, during the day, during the night, 24/7, and you'll get your answers from reliable sources. You can scan the QR code on the screen and you can sign up for Just Answer. The answers you need at a price that is right. Scan the QR code and sign up for Just Answer today. Thank you for your support. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Well, we did something different today, so we have commercial break in the middle and at the end. Well, as I mentioned to you before, we have new sponsors coming in to support the American Business Podcast, and we started to introduce and promote our new sponsors. If you are interested in promoting your company, your products and services, feel free to send us an email. We welcome advertisers and sponsors. Our email address is americanbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. We also welcome your feedback. What do you think about the podcast? If you are interested in certain subject or if you like to see certain guests, let us know and we'll do our best to include and invite those guests to our podcast as well as cover the subjects that you are interested in the American Business Podcast. Also, if you like to be a guest in the American Business Podcast, we use the same email address, americanbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. I am also welcoming you to our website, americanpodcast.tv. We keep our website updated. You can see our coming schedule. In the coming episodes, you can see who will be our guest and what type of subjects we will be covering in the American Business Podcast. And as you know, American Business Podcast is a YouTube Silver Award-winning business podcast, and we truly appreciate your support. If you haven't done so, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And if you are feeling more generous, you can also leave your comments, your thoughts in the chat box. I have the QR code on the screen for the YouTube channel. You can sign up and you can join the American Business Podcast community. We are a growing business community and we truly appreciate your support. I'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for your interest. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the coming The American Business Podcast episodes. The American Business Podcast is the voice of American business. We welcome businesses based in United States as well as internationally. And we are the voice of American business. In that sense, we keep our podcast educational, informative, and our guests, they are business leaders, business professionals, and experts. And we are bringing you educational, informative content in each The American Business Podcast episode. Thank you again. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the coming The American Business Podcast episodes. Have a great day.